Terri Pickens, how are you?
I'm well. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
The sun is out. The world is not so dark. God bless it. It's the best.
Yes. Great time of year, spring in Boise.
It is really, really great.
Yeah.
You are running as a Democrat for the governor.
I am.
But we're not here really to talk about your campaign. You and I connected. We actually connected quite some time ago, and we weren't able to get the calendars aligned. But I reached out to you again recently because there are a lot of bills going through. How much longer do you think we have in the legislative session, by the way? A couple more weeks.
I'm really hoping it's just the 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
You get to the point where they're doing more bad than good. So time to go home.
Time to go home. 2 more weeks. I can hang in there for 2 more weeks. So we have 2 more weeks. There are a lot of bills coming out. And I actually just had Alana Rubel on Tuesday, and she had a list of things. She's like, whew, it was a difficult conversation. But you had put out a commentary about one of the bills in particular, I don't have the bill number, but it was
House Bill 822.
822 from Representative Skog, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And this one in particular says, look, we have an obligation, or the bill says the state would have an obligation. Is it state employees or all employees in certain areas?
It's all humans who hold certain titles and licenses and credentials.
Why don't you explain the bill? Because I think you're going to do it better than I am.
Okay, absolutely. House Bill 822 is a bill that was proposed to impose a penalty on teachers, mental health counselors, administrators, physicians, doctors who have a conversation with someone under 18, a youth, who appears, discusses, or looks like they might be social transitioning, and a very vague term, but in layman's terms, if you have a kid that starts to dress, act, or identify with anything other than their born biology, then those folks I just named, the doctors, the teachers, the administrators, the mental health counselors, are under obligation to immediately, and by immediately mean 78 or 72 hours, report that to the parents. And if they don't, the Attorney General could impose a $100,000 penalty and strip them of all their licensure in the state. It's insane.
Got it. You didn't like this.
No.
Which is why I'm like, okay, help me understand. And you very kindly agreed to come in. Thank you for giving me that breakdown. Yeah. Talk to me about this.
I would love to. So there are a couple of reasons why I'm so opposed to the bill. The first one is I'm a mother with children, and I have been in Idaho my whole life, and we are a freedom-loving state. And I have been touting this for years, that the Idaho GOP presently, the alleged party of small government, is now governing every single thing about how we are to parent our kids. And I think enough's enough. House Bill 822 quite literally imposes on the freedoms of our kids, of our teachers, of our doctors, of our medical providers, and our mental health counselors by imposing these requirements that are nearly impossible, if not impossible, to comply with. And honestly, I don't think that the House and Representative Skog have any forethought about what they're doing when they pass this legislation. They don't think about how is this going to actually work in practice. They pass these culture war bills because it earns them points with their PACs. I don't know who it's earning points with. Certainly isn't earning points with Idaho families, but they pass this legislation, then they don't have any idea or concept of the damage it's going to do to our kids. And I'd like to just share, for example, how it impacts my family and why I'm so opposed to this bill. My kid is not transitioning. He's not social transitioning, but my kid has long hair and he wears jewelry. And to me, that's an expression. That's the freedom of expression for him to dress how he wants, to present how he wants. I also his friends. He has friends who don't identify as one or the other, and they're neutral. They don't dress one way or the other. It's as neutral and the term non-binary as it comes. Why aren't they allowed to have that identity? Why can't they dress the way they want? I have a daughter whose girlfriend liked to wear basketball shorts and basketball jerseys in high school. Would that have been a problem under this House Bill 822? Yes, because that's not her biology. just because she doesn't want to wear, spring dresses and pigtails. It's actually imposing on the freedoms of our kids. And that's where I say enough is enough. I mean, we can get into the details of the bill as to why it's so horrible, but as a general premise, every single parent in Idaho should be concerned about the Idaho legislature, the GOP supermajority, stripping your kids of their freedoms, their rights, and their ability to just live their lives without control.
Okay. Lot here. Let's start picking this apart if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
When you're saying that they're not allowed to do these things, that children aren't allowed and youth aren't allowed to do these things, how do you mean?
So,
like, let's take your son with long hair and jewelry. Okay.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily that they aren't allowed to do it if their parents are going to sign off, I think. But you got to remember that the Idaho legislature always does these little bellwether laws and these gateway laws, I'll call them. If we pass this, then we can move forward and pass this. So this is the House Bill 822 is the bill that basically creates culture war monitors with our teachers, our administrators, and now they're required to monitor any social transitioning, meaning identifying anything other than the biology that you were born with. And what if, again, we have kids that don't identify, or they identify as the other, or they just want to dress in a way that they, aren't judged or they feel comfortable. If we have culture war monitors watching out what they're doing, they're not going to feel free to express themselves because they're going to be feeling like their parents are going to be receiving a phone call every time they dress a certain way, every time they wear their hair a certain way, or put jewelry on, or wear eyeliner, or sometimes they call it guy liner. It doesn't mean that these kids are becoming trans, which is what the bill is trying to prevent. It just means that they're trying to express themselves in a way that makes themselves feel comfortable. And if we're going to police that, that's telling them they can't do it. So while the bill doesn't say they can't, it does say they can't.
I'm not 100% following.
Okay.
So because you're saying that it sounds like what the bill is saying is, look, if you have, let's say, a 16-year-old guy who shows up in like a mini skirt or something, then it's not that they can't show up in a mini skirt. It's just that the teacher's like, Brian's in a mini skirt. And I'm not 100% sure. Or Brian comes up in a mini skirt and's like, you're going to call me Susan from now on. And the teacher's like, okay, Brian wants to be called Susan and Brian's wearing a mini skirt. I'm not saying I'm not going to call Brian Susan, and I'm not saying Brian can't show up in a mini skirt. But I just have to let Brian's parents know, like, hey man, Brian showed up in a mini skirt and wants to be called Susan. Just FYI, none of my affair, just letting you know. And yours, it sounds like you're saying that's policing Brian and preventing him from showing up in mini skirt and being called Susan.
Yes, and I'll explain. First, don't forget that the clock starts running 72 hours from that moment, the first time Brian shows up and wants to be called Susan, the first time, 72 hours. Mm-hmm. Let's ask a question. What if Brian is one of those kids that is on the verge of a mental health crisis because he can't identify as Brian and they want to become Susan? Let's just say.
Sure.
And Brian wanting to be Susan, their parents aren't as receptive as, say, I would be.
Sure.
And the 72 hours starts to run and the parents are notified. And I guarantee you that the risk of Brian wanting to be Susan surviving that is very slim. The highest rates of suicide among kids who aren't allowed to be and express who they are is out of what you can comprehend in Idaho. Highest rates in the nation. So what we're telling Brian, who wants to be called Susan, is that his wishes about who he is and his identity don't matter. And he's going to take that with him when he leaves the room. And his risk of suicide just went up exponentially. So while the law doesn't say he can't do that, that's just the next step. As soon as this gets through, as soon as this passes, and as soon as we're penalizing teachers for failing in that 72-hour period, the next law that you guarantee to be seen is that they can't do it at all.
Okay, so it seems like there are two things then. You're saying that you're articulating a risk that's apparent, or excuse me, that you're saying, hey, look, if Brian wants to become Susan and Brian's not allowed to become Susan, that's bad for Brian. And then you're also saying if the parents aren't receptive to Brian being Susan, then that's a reason why we wouldn't tell the parents.
Right. And it's not that there should be no obligation first and foremost. We're literally creating the culture war police. Think about that. I might be putting some layman's terms on this, but people in Idaho need to understand in terms that they can understand. For freedom-loving Americans, freedom-loving Idahoans, we don't like, being told what to do. And now our teachers and our administrators and our mental health counselors, the counselors that are helping Brian, are now under obligation to break that trust. And if they don't, they're going to lose their licensure and be fined $100,000. I'd like to get to that part too, but I want to stick with the bill itself. The bill does not offer any protections for Brian. What if the mental health counselor knows that Brian has suicidal ideation if he can't transition or social transition? Let's be clear. It is illegal in Idaho right now for a trans teen to transition in Idaho. It's not happening here. So it's already illegal.
Medically transition.
Right. Social transition is dressing different, acting different, changing your pronouns, asking people to respect your identity. That's now where we are. They've already outlawed one. They're coming for this. So that being said, let's say that Brian wants to socially transition because of the suicidal ideation he has because he doesn't identify as him and he wants to be Susan. The mental health counselor is the person that he is sitting in a room with and trusts and is helping him work through that issue. And now that person has to, first thing right out of the gate, let's not even bring in HIPAA and bring in the privacies afforded a counselor, they are under a mandatory reporting, which is a violation of free speech because it's forced speech. They're forced to violate HIPAA. They're forced to violate every single oath they take as a counselor, knowing that if they call Brian's parents, it could end up with Brian having suicidal ideation and, maybe succeeding. And then we have one less kid. And that's tragic to me.
Got it. And again, I'm just trying to flush out. You're saying, look, because this is a very high stakes situation, the counselor, and say Brian has, the counselor's worried that Brian has suicidal ideation around his transition.
Yep.
You're saying because of that, they should not be obligated to tell the parents because this is a high risk situation and the parents may not respond in the way that, people would want the parents to respond to. And therefore we should withhold this information.
What I'm saying is the bill doesn't craft out any protections for either the counselor or for Brian. There are no safety protections prepared or drafted in House Bill 822. It just is devoid of any protections whatsoever. And I'm going to relate it back to these culture war bills. When they get passed, the trigger law ban, for example, they don't think about the consequences of not having carve-outs for health and safety. Women are dying in Idaho because of the trigger ban, and it never occurred to them that there might be a crisis with health and safety of women. It's the same for this. What about our children? There's no carve out for the health and safety of our kids.
For parents that hear this and they're like, I'm the health and safety of my kid, right? Like when you're saying, hey, there are no protections for the children and the counselors, what is it like? Do parents have a place in your mind with this consideration, which is like, look, if my kid's on the verge of a suicidal ideation for any topic, I have 3 boys. Like I would absolutely want to know instantaneously. It's like, whoa, whoa, like my 14-year-old is starting to have suicidal ideations. Like I would want to know immediately whether or not, in hindsight and like whatever it is. And, so I'm just trying to understand like, okay, so I would have to be cool with like, okay, there's an adult out here who knows that my kid is having suicidal ideations and they weren't required to tell me. So they didn't tell me. Okay. And then I, as a parent, can't take whatever, whatever the suicidal ideation is around. It's like, gotta get after this immediately.
I'm going to actually clear you up here. So
right.
there is a requirement that mental health counselors report immediately to the parents if there is an imminent risk of suicide.
Okay.
What this bill does is creates the situation that creates the suicidal ideation.
How do you mean?
If these kids can't be who they are, that's what increases the risk.
But that's presupposing a position that the parents have.
I'm going to give you another situation.
Wait, but hang on. Isn't that presupposing that the parents will respond in a certain way? And you're saying this is creating the risk because the parents may not respond. What if the parents were like, wonderful? Yep. Then you're actually preventing suicidal ideation. It's only if they don't respond the way that people would want them to, that the suicidal ideation or perhaps the act itself is engaged.
So we're jumping down a little bit of a rabbit hole here about what the counselor knows about the parents.
What I'm saying is they don't. Nobody does.
Right. And what I'm saying about the suicidal ideation part is most kids who are going through social transition have had suicidal thoughts. They may not be suicidal in the moment.
Yeah, that's
what
fine.
I'm saying is if there is a risk that them going and being reported or not being able to present the way that they want to present, that increases the risk. I'm not saying that the counselor, if there's an imminent risk, the counselor's going to tell the parents anyway. But let me put it a different way. To what extent the bill requires. There's no safety net. Let's say that the parents are significantly against a social transition.
Sure.
And the Brian is telling his counselor, I'm afraid to tell my dad because I think he will hurt me, physically hurt me if he finds out. There's not a protection in HB 22 for the counselor to deal with that in that 72 hours before calling the parents. There's no safety precautions for the kid under any circumstance. And that's what I mean by there was no thought.
CPS. It's not that we don't have protection from people getting abused by parents. We have very robust and very clear laws around, like, you can't beat your son if you don't like him.
Appreciate that.
So again, what I keep coming back to is children are very anxious around what their parents are going to do with a lot of things, mm-hmm. right? Like my 9-year-old threw a tantrum recently, and and he's very energetic. I'm energetic. He's very energetic, and he like threw the stool on the ground, mm-hmm. right? And I was letting him work through it, and he throws the stool on the ground, and he freaks out because the stool is this little, it's like a trashy Amazon basic little stool, and it's painted black, and there was like this little black smudge on the white carpet, and he ran upstairs. He's like, oh my gosh, and he's like crying. He's really upset. He's like, I don't want to tell you. You're going to be so mad at me. I'm like, buddy, it's okay. What happened? And he'd go downstairs and he's like, I don't want to get kicked out of the house. This is what my 9-year-old's saying. And he's freaking out. It's like, give him hugs, get him calmed down, and like smudge to get the thing out of the car. It's not a big deal, right? So very frequently, any parent would understand that what builds up in somebody's head is not always what happens in reality.
No, I appreciate that.
Right. So
I appreciate that.
When we're saying, hey man, you posited a position where somebody's saying, hey, if my dad finds out, he's going to abuse me. But 2 things. 1, that's not necessarily the case. And 2, it's also what if my dad, if the parent finds out and they're super supportive, what is like, then that's obviously a positive thing where the child would be starting to get support at home if people wanted to support him.
Yeah.
Right. So when we're saying like, hey man, we're increasing the risk to these children, that presupposes a negative reaction at home without any information about what the home is.
So let me ask you a rhetorical question then. Why not put safety net language in the bill for that situation?
What do you mean?
Safety net. Let the counselor not be imposed on 72 hours and figure it out.
What does that mean?
If the mental health counselor and Brian are trying to work through a way to get him through this process with the parents before.
I don't understand. When you say we'll get them
The mental
through the
health
process.
counselor has 72 hours to call mom and dad and say,
Right.
your kid is social transitioning.
Right. Or is having
And
problems.
without any safety net for what Brian has to face. And I'm going to tell
Don't
you.
we have law enforcement?
I'm going to tell you. This is great.
This is
I
great.
like this dialogue because I have for 30 years represented children in child protective cases pro bono. I am on case 62 cases in 27, almost 30 years. And I will tell you, Matt, that you and I'm a great parent. I suspect you're a great parent. There are a lot of people in Idaho who are not great parents. And when I say not great parents, I mean horrific parents. And you're right, Child Protective Services is there for a reason, but you act as if that happens instantaneously. It is not. It's an 18-month process. So 72 hours versus an 18-month process. It takes at least a week just to get through the child protective custody issue. Now, if a kid is afraid of his parents, Child Protective Services is not going to get involved. That's where you're wrong. And there aren't.
Oh, I didn't mean that CPS was going to jump in if the kid's like, "Hey, I'm afraid my dad's going to be not happy with me."
I'm afraid my dad's going to kill me.
Okay.
That's to my point is there's 72 hours. Mm-hmm. And that is just not enough time to work through in some of these cases. There has to be a safety mechanism written in to HB 822, and there just isn't. There's no way to protect the kids in this. And that's why I say it hurts our kids. I would like to talk about how it hurts our professionals.
Got it. But just to close the loop on this one, not essentially, it seems like expressly what you're saying is parents are a risk to children in this situation.
Some parents.
The bill does not distinguish.
Exactly my point.
No, but what I'm saying is your objection to the bill is not distinguishing. You're saying some parents are not good parents. Therefore, all parents should have this information, not necessarily withheld because it's not affirmative.
No. You're misunderstanding. What I'm saying is there's no safety net for this one little situation. There could be a carve out when the health and safety of the kid is at risk. That's it. That there could be a carve out for that, just like there could have been a carve out in the trigger ban. They've chosen not to put a carve out in. It has to be absolute or nothing. And
May I make a request?
Yeah.
Can we not make this analogous to the sugar ban? Because I think these are two really different issues.
Absolutely. No problem. But I'm saying there's no carve out for health and safety of the kid. It's not excluding everybody. It's good parents, situations that can be worked through in 72 hours, but there should be a carve out for this one little situation where if there's a kid that genuinely fears his health and safety, there should be a carve out that they have more time than 72 hours to work through the issue. And it's just not in there.
And you don't feel like that's an obstruction to parents?
No, absolutely not. I've met some of these parents in court.
Well, I think we've all met bad parents.
Yeah.
I don't think we necessarily, I'm sure you've met plenty of parents who have their kids removed from their custody. Yeah. I don't think most people would advocate for removing children just carte blanche from parents' custody, right? So we've all met bad people, but we generally don't, write policy around that one bad person per se, right? Like what portion of you unless I'm wrong.
Yeah. I'm an attorney. I'm an attorney. I know there are a lot of laws out there to protect people from bad people.
No, for sure. But what I'm saying is you're saying, look, what portion of parents are going to kill their kid? Okay, well, probably pretty small. Right. Okay, great. But what
is
we're
that
going to do?
We're willing to take?
Well, it
is
depends.
It a risk? That one kid?
That depends.
Shouldn't there be a carve out for that one kid? Doesn't his life matter? Isn't it is amoral to forget about the one kid who is at risk?
I don't think anybody's advocating for forgetting about a kid that's murdered. I think
it's not in the bill.
What I'm saying is the movie Minority Report is exactly what you're talking about, which is like you're guilty of a pre-crime. And the pre-crime is we believe, or the kid believes in this very, anxious situation, the kid believes that you're not going to be accepting, or you might really aggressively not be accepting, or you're going to kill him. Okay. And the kid believes that. And because of that, the state of Idaho steps in and says like, okay, well, we know this stuff about your kid and your kid's really anxious about this. And we're going to treat that anxiety as if that anxiety is very real and justified. And you would in fact do this, you parent, even though we don't know you, because the carve out wouldn't be like, okay, we'll interview the parents. I don't know what the carve out would be, but it's essentially like, look, you're essentially guilty until proven innocent as a parent, as somebody who would murder the kid. And therefore we have to protect the kid from you.
I disagree. I disagree. I wholeheartedly disagree.
Well, isn't it that if the kid says, I think my dad will kill me, then you guys want to carve out because you're like, okay, then we're going to take it seriously and believe the dad would kill the kid.
Right. At least not impose a $100,000 fine and the 72-hour requirement on the healthcare provider or the counselor or the teacher. That's my point, is you are putting the burden of all of this on two people without the rest of that intervention. If the counselor thinks this is credible, there should be time to investigate and explore before the kid is just sent home with that risk.
Gotcha.
There just should be, 72 hours is such a short amount of time in the legal world to get anything done to protect the kid. And I think that kid's life matters.
Oh, I think every kid's life matters. Like, I don't think that's really an articulation that needs to be repeated for either of us, because I don't think either of us are saying kids' lives don't matter.
No, I don't think either one of us are.
You want to talk about the professionals?
I do. Because, again, as an attorney, I do a lot of administrative law. I see how these laws are enforced in practice. And there is no doubt in my mind that if HB 822 is passed through the Senate and signed by the governor, that it will be immediately challenged as an excessive fine. Idaho Constitution has a carve out that says you cannot charge excessive fines for administrative things or even criminal acts. And in this case, $100,000 is, it's probably probably is the highest fine in the state of Idaho that we're imposing against a teacher who makes substantially less than that.
What would be a reasonable fine? Like 20 grand, or like, I literally don't know. What would be a reasonable fine in this case?
0. No fine, because you're creating culture war police, and that's not fair on our administrators, our school teachers, our mental health counselors. That's not what they signed up for. They didn't sign up to be culture war police. What they did sign up to: educate our kids, take care of our kids, listen to our kids when they're having troubles, giving our kids healthcare. They didn't sign up for policing what our kids wear, how our kids act, what names they want to be called. That's just not what they were hired to do. But you're going to strip them of their credentials and their licensure if they don't report that my son wears hair in a ponytail. And so do I think that $100,000 is commensurate with that? No. The Idaho Consumer Protection Act is a $1,000 fine for defrauding consumers. Like, literally, you could defraud consumers to millions of dollars. It's a $1,000 fine. So is it commensurate? Absolutely not. My kid wears a ponytail. Teacher doesn't report as $100,000. Joe Blow over here defrauds 500 people and selling them bad boats, and he gets a $1,000 fine in the Consumer Protection Act.
So
criminal penalties are even lower. The criminal penalties for harming children are lower.
You mean the monetary penalties?
Yeah, monetary penalties written in the statute: $5,000 for felony injury to a child, $1,000 for, standard misdemeanors. I mean, we're talking peanuts compared to $100,000.
Do you get jail or prison time with a felony injury to a child?
Absolutely, you do. Yeah.
So when we're saying that the penalties are not analogous, it's like, yeah, but one is monetary and one is monetary and prison.
What's $100,000 to a school teacher who makes $40,000?
I don't know.
Career ending, because they've already stripped you of your licensure. And so to me, it will get challenged, and it will lose, and it will lose in the constitutional challenge for the excessive fine. There is just no correlation between no nexus between $100,000 and the alleged act of not calling parents within 72 hours. There's no nexus as to why that those two things can be brought together in any way.
Gotcha.
Like, one doesn't explain the other.
Gotcha. So
it's just a penalty for not doing your job as the culture war police.
I was actually wondering about this because it's so large, and it's almost like, well, okay, how did you arrive at that number? And I've heard from a lot of people like, look, we have a system of fines, right? They didn't say the felony injury of a child, but other people have brought up, like, how much is like if you get caught with marijuana. I just had a conversation with somebody the other day about this on the show. If you get pulled over for like just marijuana, like you're not trafficking, but you get like a ticket and just a fine, right? Or like a DUI, you get no,
not anymore.
No,
they changed that this last session. But,
wait, what happens then?
Well, they raised the fine for marijuana possession, so it's $1,000 fine plus another $300 plus, possible jail time.
Okay, so you do have a fine.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you get $1,000 plus a possible $300. Got it. And then if you have a DUI, like you got to like cost you some amount of money, right?
Correct.
And this one is like 10x or 20x or 100x what those are.
Right.
So
with no crime involved.
Got it. And so your position is, hey, look, man, the law itself is written in such a way that it's going to make it constitutionally offensive, and it's going to become unenforceable anyway.
Correct.
Got it. Is there anything else about it like that?
The vagueness of the definitions?
Help me understand this one, because I was talking to somebody 2 days ago and they're like, the bill has changed a little bit. Like, we're not 100% sure what. Help me understand what the actual definitions are.
Well,
or the vagueness of them.
Yeah, the vagueness of them, because they're not generally defined. Facilitate. Facilitate means that the administrators, the teachers, the mental health counselors are facilitating. Facilitate to me means assisting, helping, right? Facilitating, arranging, allowing. But just so what's really happening is it's just observing.
Wait,
they observe. If they observe something, they're not facilitating it.
So it was if you facilitate a child socially transitioning.
Correct. No, that's one of the terms. The other one is contribute. If you contribute to it, if you call them they, them, instead of Brian, him, if you call them they, them, or call Susan she, her, that's contributing, facilitating. Appearance. Let's talk about appearance. This is where I'm the most offended.
May I ask a quick question
before
we go to appearance? So it's saying that if you participate with this social transition and engage in different name, different pronouns, different whatever, you participate with this person. They're like, this person's like, Brian says, hey, I want to go into the girls' bathroom. And the teacher's like, yeah, you can go in the girls' bathroom because I consider you a girl now. So that sense of facilitation of we're collaborating, we're working with you, we're cooperating with your transition. That's kind of the spirit of it.
That's the essentially the preamble and the definitions. That's what this bill is trying to prevent.
Right. Gotcha.
Preventing the administrators, teachers, mental health providers from facilitating or, assisting. Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So that's the spirit of the bill.
Gotcha.
But what it as written and in practice, it's just observing is a violation. Just observing it. So there's some vagueness there. Appearance is vague to me because how do you definitively appear as your biology? I'm wearing a pantsuit today.
Indeed you are.
I am. And, 20 years ago in the practice of law, I would not have been able to go into some courtrooms without a skirt and stockings. But this is 2026. I can wear what I want to court now as long as it's respectful. But are we saying that this is too masculine for my daughter to wear to school? Is it too masculine for her to wear a football jersey and men's basketball shorts? Is it too feminine for my son to grow his hair out and wear in a ponytail and wear jewelry or guy liner? Is that too feminine? Where do we draw the line as to what appearance raises enough alarm with the school teacher, the administrator, the mental health counselor, to where they believe that the kid is now social transitioning, which also is vague. What is social transition?
So then in these events, what would, let's say, happen? So let's say I'm an English teacher, I'm a math teacher, I'm a history, whatever. I'm a teacher somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. And I see a gal wearing her boyfriend's football jersey and, basketball shorts or something. I'm like, all right, Cheryl over there, she's wearing a bunch of what I would consider guy attire because she's not on the football team and there are only guys on the football team. Okay, send a note home, essentially just saying, hey, Cheryl appears to be dressing in male attire. Just wanted to let you know. Boom, off it goes. Or a guy shows up, biological guy shows up with a bunch of guy liner, mascara, ponytail, and a skirt. I'm like, okay. Brian shows up, he's got a whole bunch of makeup on, atypical for youth to generally do this. Just so you know, guy liner, makeup, mini skirt, just so you know. And I send home an email, right? Or I don't know how the communication needs to be facilitated, but the idea is that their teachers would be at risk, or at least if I'm understanding you, teachers would be at risk of taking all of these notes. And it's not just the student's teacher. So say the Cheryl with the football jersey is observed by 10 different teachers or 10 different administrators and the janitor. So those 21 people, administrators, teachers, and janitor, then all are like, well, I suppose I have to send a communication because I don't know if everyone else is sending a communication. So we're all now sending emails, including the janitor, because he doesn't want to lose $100,000. He probably doesn't make that much money. That's essentially what I'm taking as your anxiety. Is that accurate?
Well, take the janitor out because he has no licensure to be the janitor, so he's not covered under the.
He's covered just the other 20 people.
Just the other ones that have licensure. Yeah.
Okay.
Just the ones that are have licensure that the Idaho Attorney General can strip them. So it only applies to them.
Got it.
And there is no mechanism written into the law for how to handle what you've just put forth. There's no mechanism written in. Again, no forethought in to how this bill is going to work in practice.
What I would imagine would have to become a system in all places like this. Let's take a school site. Okay. What I imagine would have to happen is there wouldn't be individual notifications to parents. There would be one notification up into a funnel to one administrator, and the teacher would be like, hey, I observed Cheryl in the football jersey today, and that administrator puts it in the Cheryl, concern bucket. And then if he has 3 or 4 or 10 more, all 10 of these teachers hey, Cheryl football jersey, that one person aggregates them as okay, we're not making duplicative, communication here. So here we go. I'll just send out one email. Your child was observed to be wearing something that, whatever. So that, but you'd have to, even if that system worked or didn't work, I have no idea. I don't understand systems at school sites, but then all the schools would have to adopt some kind of policy or system around that, because in the absence of that, you'd have again, the 20 different administrators and teachers all reaching out at once, but people would have to figure that out.
Let me throw a wrench in that too. Let me extend it.
I like solutions.
Just let me throw one more little fun fact into your scenario.
Great.
It's 3:00 on Friday, the day before Memorial Weekend, and the administrator's out of the office, and the teacher observes it and sends the thing, and 72 hours later is Memorial Day. Still nobody in school. 72 hours has run. How many of them get charged $100,000? Who loses their licensure, which means they lose their job? There's no mechanism to prevent or protect the administrators and the school teachers and the counselors either. There's just no mechanism. There's no fail safe to protect the people they're actually trying to put on the line here. I get protecting parents. I'm a parent. Do I want to know if my kid is having suicidal ideation? Yes, and I have no doubt that if it were imminent, that I would know. But do I need an administrator sending me an email if that's the mechanism by which if that's sufficient to? That's another part of the vague. Is that sufficient to notify me? What is the protocol for them notifying me? How many emails a week am I going to get if my kid wears a ponytail or puts on the guy liner or wears jewelry? How many emails do I have to get a week before they don't have to send them anymore? That's also not written in.
The parental consent.
Yes.
This is a thing. And I remember because we went to our pediatrician and he was like, hey man, you guys need to, like we have this new form.
Yeah.
And it was, approved all medical, things, whatever. And I remember sitting down with my wife, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't understand. Like, what is this? Why are we getting this form to fill out? And we went through and we're like, okay. Like eventually we figured out, okay, this is the situation. This is the background. Like, do you know the pediatrician? Do you feel comfortable with the pediatrician? All these different things. So we kind of flushed it out and we're like, okay, great. So then it became, okay, we don't have to fill out this form every single time we go to the pediatrician. We don't have to fill it out every single day. We fill it out once and we kind of go from there. So I wonder if it would be the kind of thing where schools would adapt and say like, hey, look, we only give you 2 warnings and within a certain number of within a semester or a quarter or something. I don't know. And it sounds like the bill doesn't actually articulate what's sufficient either, but
That
you would
is correct.
just have to have something that was defendable to the attorney general, or the attorney general would have to give, essentially interpretations of we interpret this as in X amount of notifications within X amount of days or something of that nature.
I mean, they're going to have to come up with a whole set of rules and regulations under IDAPA to manage this situation.
What's IDAPA?
The Idaho Administrative Procedures Act, it's the rules that are passed by the agencies, the various governing agencies. And in this case, the licensure board for teachers, the licensure board for the counselors, all these, they all are governed by IDAPA. They all have rules and regulations that support the statutes. HB 822, if passed, would become a statute, and then there would be all of these rules and regulations to try to do what you're talking about, is try to figure out how do you now impose or implement said statute. And so for licensure, if licensure is on the line, there would be all these exactly what you're talking about, but they haven't addressed any of it because they didn't even give 14 minutes of testimony to the people who are concerned about it. No mental health counselors, no teachers. I mean, they just shut off conversation about it in the House, wouldn't allow the minority report, the House minority report that sets forth these issues. And they just said, we're not going to even listen to you anymore. We're just going to pass it and move it to the Senate. And that's a concern. So while I have my own personal feelings about, how it impacts the kids, every teacher is now worried about this. Every administrator is now worried about this. And every mental health counselor who treats kids is going to be worried about this. Because, and you say don't correlate it to one thing, but we don't have enough doctors in Idaho. We can't afford to lose any teachers, administrators, and mental health counselors. We just can't afford to lose them. And we're going to lose them if they're subjected to a $100,000 civil penalty and loss of licensure.
So the bill, so again, we're kind of wrapping a couple things together here. So the bill as it's written has an excessive fine, which you feel would make it a very easy constitutional objection.
Correct.
The bill engages in language that is difficult to define, right, as in facilitating or something of that nature. It also is vague in the articulation of exactly how these things are defined with social transition, like appearance or something like that. And on top of that, from a professional standpoint, you think it would be damaging to the population through population of accessible professionals because they're like, listen, man, I don't need this. I'm going to engage in a different, professional pursuit or something of that nature. And because I don't like the threat of this.
Correct. That's exactly what's going to happen. That's what happened. Why we have a healthcare crisis with not enough providers, because they were subjected to excessive fines and felonies for practicing medicine. And you're going to have teachers who just, it isn't worth it to, be paid, $40,000 to $50,000 a year to coming out to be in Idaho. It isn't going to be worth it for them to put their entire credibility, credentials, and career at stake for the sake of a bill that they aren't trained to interpret. And there's no rules that tell them how to enforce it.
How do we navigate this? Because I have a friend who's on the school board in my former state, and I was chatting with him about this before I even reached out to him. Like, there's this, there's this bill, and I don't really know how to interpret it. He has experiences within his school district where, kids were experiencing some, I don't know exactly how you term it, but they had gone to counselors or a teacher or something and had been like, I think I might, like Brian to Cheryl or Susan or whatever, right? And the school knew, and the schools took the position that they had to essentially proactively or preemptively protect the kids from parents. And the area I moved from is populated in general with people that are extremely tolerant of things of that nature. And the community felt very betrayed. They felt betrayed. They're like, these are our kids. Like, you don't need to protect them. Like, we are the protection for our kids from the world. Like, that's the nature of it. And the schools defended themselves and said, we have to protect the kids from what you might do, not what you have done, and not what we know for sure you're going to do. We have to protect them from what you might do. And the parents are like, that doesn't make sense. I haven't done anything. And if my kid is experiencing duress, be it something that you think is warranted or not, I need to know about it. And there was this big conflict, and there was this mass loss of faith, at least with some populations within the community around that. Like, that's a real concern to me.
For the sake of diplomacy, I'm going to say this.
You don't have to be diplomatic.
No,
you can call me an idiot.
No, I'm going to be diplomatic to the comment that the community felt betrayed. Because my sentiment to the community is, how is what Brian discusses with his counselor and what Brian wears to school hurting the community? It's not.
Okay, well.
And how is it hurting the parents if Brian wants to wear something different than what's in his closet? It doesn't hurt the parents.
I don't believe anybody said it hurt the community. I think what has been expressed is that parents, which the community was made up of, felt that they should not be, one, assumed to be, again, preemptively protected, their kids protected against from them, however you want to articulate that. Because the parents were like, we are accepting people, right? Why would you keep something from this, from us in this way when you have no evidence that we're going to behave poorly or the way that you, the school, deem is inappropriate? So that was one thing. Nobody said it was going to hurt the community. It was the parents being close and connected with their children and feeling that the school had this important information and was withholding it from parents. And that became a large concern. And another health concern that a lot of the parents had that I heard from was they're like, look, if somebody is dealing with gender identity issues, right? If somebody is a boy and they think they're a girl, or somebody's a girl and they think they're a boy, whatever it is, or feel they're a boy, I don't know how to say it properly. But if you're experiencing those things, then overwhelmingly everybody agrees this is a very, very, you need to have a resource-rich environment surrounding you to help in whichever way you want to help. Whether you think that this person is actually in the wrong gender, you need resources there. Whether you think this person isn't in the wrong gender, you need resources there. Whichever way, it's a very difficult time that's fraught with, self-harm, suicidal ideation, suicide, substance abuse, both ways. People that get through it and they're like, okay, I wasn't really in the wrong body, I was going through a hard time. Or somebody who gets through it and they're like, I was in the wrong body, I was going through a hard time. It's a very rough time. The person to provide those resources is going to be the parents. Unless the school is, if people feel that every time a 16-year-old feels they're in the wrong body, that they should, receive transition care, whatever that might be, it's certainly not going to be in Idaho, right? So if you're like, okay, the parents should know, right? It just, the people didn't feel like they were being respected as the first line of care for their children. Because again, the school district was like, well, no, we have to protect your kid first and foremost, specifically from what you may do. It's not that it was hurting the community. It was hurting the relationship that the parents had with their kid.
Being a parent that sits down at the dinner table with my kid, regularly and has conversations with my kid, if I didn't know that my kid was having struggles like this, I would take that as an affront to my own parenting skills. I personally would think that that's on me. So would I be upset with the school? No. Would I think that the entire community is going to be upset with the school? No. What I think that the people that are challenging this should maybe have some introspection and look and say, hey, why won't my kid talk to me about this? Now, you think that it is a perfect world. It really isn't. Our kids can talk to us. We are open people. We have discussions. We sit down and we do that, but that's not everyone's situation. And there are people who have a predisposed idea that kids should absolutely 100% identify with their biology. And if a child is born into that and is raised under that and sits at the dinner table with parents that continuously reinforce that, of course they're going to be afraid to talk about it with their parents. And now we're taking away the only avenue they have for protection and safety to talk about it with someone else. Now we're saying they don't have any time at all. 72 hours. They got to work through this really big issue because their parents aren't understanding. All I'm saying is not all situations are perfect and not all schools are going to handle it the right way. But I agree, every school should be protecting our kids in every way they can protect our kids. And if our kids aren't safe or don't feel safe talking to their own parents, there should be someone who can help them. And it shouldn't be a 72-hour trigger.
So it sounds like you're saying, look, if I were to find out that one of my boys had gone to school and was like, hey, my name's not Brian, my name's Susan. And he had everybody at school calling him Susan, and he went by she and her. And the school knew, and the counselors knew, and they did not tell me. And then I find out. I should be reflective on myself and say, hey, this is your fault, Matt, because your kid does not feel comfortable talking to you. And you need to be reflective on your actions or your relationship. No.
You put words in my mouth. You said my fault. And I don't attribute fault to parents. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that the entire community doesn't feel betrayed. A couple of parents feel betrayed. They should have some introspection on why.
Hang on. Let's not talk about the community I moved from that you didn't.
Okay.
So first off, and you're not the one that talked to the community there, so let's not do that. What you were saying is, look, if you sit down at the table with your kids every day, as do I, and if this happens, I think you said, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so please correct me aggressively. I believe you said that there should be introspection about why the person why the person didn't come to you first, essentially. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, so please let's be clear on this. Which means reflection on what I have done, the relationship I've facilitated with my child, so that the child didn't come to me first.
Right.
Instead of me saying, guys, you knew and you didn't say anything. Why didn't you say anything?
And now you have to pay $100,000 for not telling me. I'm saying it's a huge leap.
No. What I'm saying is that's what you're saying, which is if I'm in the situation where one of my boys starts going by Susan, I should stop and reflect on myself and my actions instead of looking to the school and saying, why didn't you guys say something?
Correct.
Got it.
I don't think that is the school's obligation to parent our children. It's the school's obligation to educate our kids, and under today's environment, to protect our kids while they're in the walls of the school. But it is not our educators and our mental health counselors and our administrators' job to parent our children. Protect, yes. Parent, no.
Gotcha. This is an intense one.
It is. And I appreciate you having a frank discussion with me about it because, you and I obviously have different views on how kids should be and I'm going to use the word outed. It's not outed, but that's kind of how they feel about it. I've talked with enough of them to know that when this 72-hour period, it in some situations it can be considered an outing, and some kids aren't ready to come out.
I don't know that you and I don't think I've articulated a position here. So for you to say we don't share the same thing, I don't think I've taken a position.
Oh, okay. Well, then
I hear what you're saying, though.
Yeah. My position is that the bill is vastly overreaching from the most fundamental elements that it's unconstitutional, but all the way up to the point where it's creating harm for our kids. It's policing something that doesn't need policed. It's governing something that shouldn't be governed. It's creating obligations on administrators, teachers, and professionals where there shouldn't be any. And it's penalizing people for showing compassion to kids. And I find that just unfathomable that we have gotten to that point in Idaho where we are now punishing people for caring about our kids.
Is there a way you would modify this bill? Or is your position there should never be any obligation for the school to inform parents about this?
It is my position that unless the kid is in imminent threat of harm or safety concerns, or all of those things that are already present, I don't think that it's the school's job to monitor culture wars. No.
You keep using the word culture wars. I don't.
Yeah.
How do you see that in this case? I hear parent and child. Mm-hmm. I hear, a situation where there might be a heightened risk of depression, anxiety, substance abuse. I hear a very difficult situation. I'm not hearing culture wars. And you keep, how do you mean?
It's because we're not talking about the basis of the bill, and that's to prevent kids from becoming trans. I was going to make it stop vibrating. Okay. The table was vibrating the table, and I couldn't figure out how. It's like my bag is up against the thing, and I was like, why is it vibrating? So,
and you feel that because it doesn't say Brian can't show up as Susan. It doesn't say Brian can't wear a skirt, right? But you feel like this is the stepping stone to saying Brian can't wear a skirt?
Correct. It is the stepping stone. We're already telling Brian it'll be a crime if he uses a woman's bathroom if they identify as a she.
And you feel that Brian should be allowed to go into the women's bathroom?
I think if Susan is fully transitioned, absolutely she should be able to use the bathroom that she identifies with, because I'm also going to say that Brian, who was born Susan, shouldn't be using the female bathroom.
Oh,
swap
okay.
it. Turn it around. Turn it around. This is what I mean.
This is for youth?
This is for anybody.
Well, the youth can't, when you say fully transition, are you saying like literally go through surgery?
Idaho just passed a bathroom bill for all people.
No, I know, but you were saying if Brian fully transitions to Susan, and I assume what you mean by that is if Brian has gone through plastic surgery to change his genitalia to something analogous to a female genitalia, then that person should not be using the male bathroom. But that's an impossible situation in the state of Idaho because youth can't go through that surgery, right?
Okay. You asked me about culture wars.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this is a stepping stone to then tell Brian he can't dress the way he wants to dress. It's a stepping stone because Idaho has already did pass through the House the bathroom bill. So, and that's for all people, adults alike. So,
right.
So yes, full adults can fully transition.
No, I know. And you were saying they've already told Brian he can't use the women's bathroom if that's how he identifies. Yeah. And then you said full transition. It's like, well, Brian as a 16-year-old can't full transition.
But what we're doing is all of these battles are a very small percentage of the population and governing a very small percentage of what's happening, in the state and in this country. And I call them culture war battles because it really is clickbait. It's headline grabbing. It brings out people to testify. It's very emotional, and it's literally a culture war issue. It's not a term I came up with. It's a culture war issue, whether or not we are going to respect the trans community. This is a bill that was targeted at trans kids. So when I say that's what I'm referring to, it's a bill that's only function is to prevent trans kids from identifying the way that they identify.
When you say its only function is for like clickbait.
No, culture wars. Culture wars, clickbait.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who don't feel that way. I know
do
a
too.
lot of people that feel that this is a principle battle.
I do. I agree. I know that they exist.
Which I don't. If you're like, listen, this bill is important to me because I want the state to articulate that the parents are the number one and sole primary protector of children, and that, you know, the state isn't taking a position that they need to protect my kid from me. That's a position that I know people have, which is like, I don't want the state to think that they know better how to raise my kid than me. And so for a lot of people, this, even though you're like, listen, very small number of people, which I think you and I very much agree with, but I think it is important for a lot of people because the underlying principle here is one that is very offensive to some parents, which is like, no, man, if something's going on with my kid, I want to know immediately. And again, for the nuances of the bill, like obviously you've made it very clear, excessive fine and vagaries and all of these things, like totally got it. And again, I don't know anything about law, so like I'll totally take your word for it. But just to say it's only for clickbait culture war stuff, I think kind of betrays some of the parents in the state. They're like, look, man, I want the state to say unequivocally, I'm the most important thing when it comes to my kid.
And if those parents are worried about their own children becoming trans?
Nope, I think it's a principle. It's not it goes beyond the trans.
They want to govern all kids in all of the state. That's I think that's what it is.
They are saying specifically.
They want the government to tell us what we have to do.
Nope. They want, with their children, the state to say, hey, is there anybody closer or more responsible for this kid than the parents? And those parents want the state to say, no, you're it. Now, do those parents want control over other kids? Nope. Do those parents want control over, you know, the government? Nope. They just want, like, listen, me and my kid, we're right here. This is the state. The state never comes in between. And I think that's what a lot of the parents that object to, not having this requirement, feel. So I'm not saying that they're right or wrong. I'm just pointing out that you said, hey man, this is the only thing this is clickbait culture war. And I know a lot of people that I think are respectable people that are like, listen, it's not about culture war. What I'm worried about is that there are states that take positions that they have to protect children from their parents. And they don't like that.
HB 822 is literally government intervention for our kids. So it doesn't say we're protecting kids from their parents. It doesn't say we're protecting parents from the schools. What it says is we've created monitors among our licensed professionals who are teaching and educating and counseling our kids that under every single circumstance, because it's super vague and overreaching, that we are interfering in the privacy of our children. And I don't see how, when you take it out of context for what the bill was proposed to do, makes any sense to any parent. The people that you're talking about, the parents that want the government to stay out of their families,
or just not get between them and their kids.
I can't agree more. This is where you build the bridge. It's one step too far for them to tell my kid what he can wear.
Is anybody telling your kid what they can wear?
I'm telling you, Matt, that if this
You're
passes,
saying it's going to be next.
This is the bellwether.
But you're arguing against something that hasn't transpired yet.
This bill hasn't passed the Senate yet.
Well, this also doesn't say what your kid can and can't wear.
It just says that he gets reported every time he doesn't dress to his biology.
Sure. But again, let's be very clear. You're saying this is the state
How is that not governmental overreach?
Well, I'm using your words. The state telling the kids what they can and can't wear.
Yep.
And this bill is not saying men shall dress thus and women shall dress thus.
Right, because it's
Now,
not defined in their appearance. That's the vagueness. Like,
it also is not saying men can't wear jewelry. It's not saying men can't wear makeup.
exactly, exactly. That's the concern. It's literally just governing. I mean, you don't like the word culture war, but if my kid wants to wear guy liner, I'm going to let him wear guy liner.
And it doesn't say your kid can't, right?
It says that if my kid goes to guy liner, wears guy liner and goes to school, and one of the teachers is worried that that looks too feminine, that they have to immediately, within 72 hours, notify me.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think that's governmental overreach.
And again, just to be clear, I'm not saying you're right or wrong on the government overreach. I'm just saying you keep saying it's saying what the kid can and can't do. And I do not hear that in the words that you are using. I hear that, hey, if the person acts in way A, then it needs to be reported to the parents. Whether or not that's appropriate, totally fine. Like, I'm not taking a position. I'm just saying, like, as it's written right now, I don't see kids can and can't do these things.
But don't you think the whole point of the bill was to prevent them from doing it because they knew it'd be reported immediately? Isn't that the function of the bill? When I say culture war bills, they're bills that are enacted just to stunt our kids' freedoms to be who they are. And that's what this is doing. It's going to stunt the freedoms of kids to express themselves. This is not some esoteric thing. It's real. When you tell a kid that he's going to be reported for wearing guy liner, he's not going to wear guy liner, whether or not it's feminine or not. He's not going to do it because he's going to get reported. That's my point. It is telling them what they can and can't do. It might not be written in the statute. There's a whole lot that's not written in that statute. But you are telling these kids how they can dress, how they can present, how they can identify. Because you're telling them if they identify anything other than their biology, it's going to be a 72-hour conversation with mom and dad. And so you are essentially telling them what they cannot do to avoid this conversation with mom and dad.
But Terry, that's only if you assume the parents wouldn't approve of it.
No, there's still a 72-hour requirement to notify every time.
You're saying it's going to be prohibitive because it will be reported to the parents. But what if the parents are like, I'm cool with it? Then your whole argument about what kids can and can't do falls apart if you don't assume that parents would be prohibitive.
Every single parent is not going to be like me. I know that.
That's fine. That doesn't mean every single parent won't not be like you.
Okay.
If you're fine with the
governmental intervention in everything that we do in our lives, then Idaho's the state for you, because that's what the GOP is doing presently. I mean, they are governing every aspect of our lives. Party of small government does not exist in this state anymore. If we're governing what kids present and teachers have to report kids for calling themselves they, them, we are over-governing. That is not liberty. That is not freedom. That is not Idaho. That is over-governing. And HB 822 is over-governance and unnecessary. And I'm sorry for those parents that feel like they're let down, that the school should have done more to help them. But you cannot govern my kid because you're worried about your own kid wearing guy liner. Like, just because you're worried about your kid doesn't mean that every single parent isn't understanding. I just don't think that in Idaho we should be governing every single thing. Books we read, books our kids can read. We're attacking librarians. We're attacking doctors. We're literally attacking the foundation of this state's liberty and freedom because we get hung up on language like you and I are discussing. But look at the overall view of what's happening. We give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. I've seen it. I know that you've probably seen it in the time you've been here. I'm done giving inches. Done. And if they're going to come after a community of marginalized kids, yeah, I'm going to stand up and say enough's enough, because eventually it's going to be something that impacts me personally and you and every other Idahoan, because again, give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. And I'm just done with it.
Terry, I can't thank you enough for coming in today.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate the conversation. It's not one that I've had, I don't want to say the pleasure, it's a dark conversation, but it's not one that I've been able to have. Yeah. And I was wondering the other day why we're discussing these things. Like, what is it about our country that has brought us to these points where, I had Representative Hill and he's running, the locker room bill and all of these things. And it's like, how, like, what is happening? Like, are we going to be looked back on this time in 60 years? I mean, I probably won't be here, but somebody's looking back and just be like, what was going on in America? And it is, regardless of why, like, these are conversations that we find ourselves needing to have.
Yes.
No matter which side you're on, it's like, these are questions that need to be flushed out, and they are difficult. And we live in a culture that, just for me having this conversation with you, I guarantee I'm getting all kinds of hate for it, just because I honestly am like curious about what you think. And I hope you don't get any hate for it, but I'm sure both of us will get flack just for talking out loud. Yep. And for that, I really thank you for having the guts to come in and just talk to me.
Yeah. And no, I appreciate you providing me an opportunity, because I do feel like we're having these kinds of conversations. They're so limited because they don't want us to be talking about what's really happening. They don't want us to be talking about how we're in a budget crisis, how we're not funding our schools, how we're not taking care of our doctors, how we're not doing all of these things, our roads are in disarray, our $1 billion in deferred maintenance. They don't want us talking about the real issues. So we get hung up on something like this. And I do have the courage to come talk about this publicly. I don't give two hoots about if I get hate because I support kids. It's okay for me. I have thick skin. They can make whatever comment they want.
I can't imagine you get offended easily.
No, I do not. Yeah. But I do appreciate you providing an opportunity for me to explain why I'm so passionate about it. It's not because this is my only issue. It's because my issue is the fundamental freedoms that we hold dear in Idaho and across this country are being taken away from us one by one. It's like the frog in water, and it's boiling and it's boiling and it's boiling. And we're getting to the point where it's too late, and we're not protecting our fundamental values, our decency, our democracy. We have to be having these conversations, because if we don't have them, there's nothing left to defend.
Could I ask you something?
Yes.
I was telling Representative Rubel, the other day, I get so much hate from the left, even though I open the platform to the Democratic leaders in the state. I have good faith conversations with people, and I don't want that. What's actually happened is I used to share the show I do here on many, Facebook groups, and, just, hey, I interviewed this person, blah, blah. And I actually stopped sharing it on more left-leaning platforms because it was like knives out. I'm like, I don't understand. You don't get one without the other. Like, if you want just a self-fulfilling echo chamber, you need not worry about anything. Just pat you and your friends on the back and be like, we're all right. But like, we can't have these conversations in good faith without push and pull. Like, we're not going to get to the root of and the principles that are driving people forward without tugging and trying to figure it out, And we don't need that. It's not helping. And people don't have to agree with you. They can agree with you. They can not agree with you. It's totally fine. Yeah. But good God, man, like, shouldn't we celebrate the effort and the engagement and the like, okay, we're getting there.
Yes.
Like, we have good ideas coming out. Like, we have good intentions coming out. You don't have to argue, but like, can we just stop trashing over? Like, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I'm the only one in the state at scale doing this type of thing in good faith with both sides. Yet at the extremes, both sides hate me for it.
Yeah.
And I just like, can we just stop that?
I would love that. Oh my gosh. You and I will agree 100% on this. One of the things that I say as I go around and I'm talking to my own people and I'm talking to the people who aren't on my side, and there are extremes on the ends. The one thing I've been asking people to do is just stop, take a breath, and listen. Go to your neighbor, especially the ones that you disagree with, and have a conversation. Because we have gotten to a point in this country where we can't have conversations with our neighbors anymore because of this conflict. And democracy is so fragile. And it relies on conversation. It relies on push and pull. It relies on people having different views, finding a way to make common ground. Because, I'm sick and tired of the pendulum swing in this country, quite frankly. It goes way up here, too far this way, and then it goes too far this way. And, right now we're here, and is it just going to go all the way back here? Why can't we just come to the middle, have conversations with our neighbors, our community members, the people in our state, the people in our country, and then our legislators and our governors and all of the people in the state and the people making the laws? Why can't we all just get together, find the common ground, have conversations with civility, without attacking each other, without the hate, without the death threats, without the things we have to deal with to have these conversations, and find out what the problem is and fix the problem? If there is a problem with the budget, we can all come together and figure out a solution. We all should be able to sit at a table and have a conversation. We do it with our family members. We can do it with our neighbors. We can do it with our community members, but we aren't doing it right now because we're so vastly divided that it is frightening. It is frightening that we can't have a conversation about this because she has a D behind her name, or him because he has an R behind his name. That's ridiculous. I can have a conversation with anybody.
And nobody even knows what's behind my name, and they still get mad at me. It's like, guys, you don't get it always.
Right. And to my point, I've been telling and asking everybody I've spoken to just start having those conversations again. Because as soon as you start listening to other people, you get out of your own echo chamber.
God bless him.
Yeah.
Terri, can't thank you enough.
Yeah,
I
no,
really
thank you.
appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time, and we'll do it again.
Yeah, I'd like to. Thank you so much.